Welcome to the Measure Success podcast, where we talk with top leaders about effective strategies that inspire success. Really excited to have with us Mark Murphy. He's the CEO of the Northeast Private Client Group based in Indiana. Huge Hoosier fan, we just learned. And he's also a three-time author working on his fourth book right now. He has been recognized as one of the top financial security professionals by Forbes and has been actually ranked #1 in New Jersey and top 20 nationwide. Mark, welcome to the Measure Success podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to spend some time with you.
Absolutely. Okay, so what makes you tick in terms of, I'm kind of curious for you, what does get you the most excited about helping your clients?
It starts with me. I grew up dumb and broke in Suffolk, New York. And, the firm that I now run, I think they offered me $1,000 a month. It wasn't even a salary. It was a draw when I started almost 40 years ago. When we put this together, I always thought we'd be successful. And I always, or at least I hoped we would. I always hoped we would be, we would make money, and or at least I hoped we would. But this was always my vehicle to help other people, and it just gets more and more clarity. It started with that mission, and today, almost 40 years later, we're celebrating our 40th anniversary. I just want to do three things every day. I want to help as many people as I can. I want to create as much wealth and abundance as I can, and I want to have fun. And if I can't do all three, I'd rather do something else. I'll go play pickleball or go to an Indiana game. Actually, I do spend a lot of time at IU, and we're actually building an apartment there. But home is New Jersey and Palm Beach, Florida, right now. Palm Beach in the winter and then New Jersey the rest of the year. It just, that I think is the difference. I also thought that the other thing that sort of made us tick is it seemed to me that a lot of the strategies that people were giving to create wealth didn't seem to match up. And it just became very clear to me early on in my career that there was only three ways to create wealth. And it wasn't what the financial advisors or your accountant was telling you, or your money manager or whoever. That all of those things were helpful, but they were more like inflation-adjusted holding tanks. The true wealth was really created in one of three areas. It was either investing in your business or some other operating company. It was investing in real estate. It was financing deals. I'll leave out divorce and inheritance because you can do it that way too. But I don't specialize in the last two. I specialize in the first three. And I just thought, that ultimately that what people were telling people wasn't true. And that ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur, that I decided about 35 years ago, Carl, that I wanted to be a hero to entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial thinking people. And all I've done is collaborate with people that want to be a hero to the same group, where not that you have a competitive advantage, that you aspire to play in a competition-free zone where the only place they can get that experience is by working with you. And you want them to be able to, and you want to help them to do that so that they can play in a competition-free zone as well in whatever their industry or mix is. And by the way, I want to clarify, an awful lot of our clients that are entrepreneurial are business owners. But entrepreneurism is a mindset. It's not owning a business. That oftentimes you're the product. And so, to me, it's very simple. As long as you can get a 4 or 5 to 1 return on your money or more, you should be able to invest in your money machine if it's your business. And if it's you, it's in things like technology or education or building your network or other things that will prepare you for success. And, because, quite frankly, people always ask me how to grow their business. And I always say you don't grow a business, you grow people. And so how do you invest if you're the target, how do you invest in yourself or invest in the people that work with and for you?
Okay, so let's go down the entrepreneurial path, because that's who we work with often is working with entrepreneurs. When you're helping them with the wealth side, right? What are some of the biggest misconceptions a business owner makes mistakes on that you help them correct?
I think the number one thing is that good leaders create followers. Great leaders create other great leaders. And so that ultimately, that the better leader you become, the smarter everybody around you is. And I think the second thing is that you can delegate. To me, I try to spend as much time as I can in my unique ability, not doing things obviously that I'm terrible at, or obviously not doing things that I'm even competent or maybe even good at. I try to spend as much time in what I'm unique, and I try to surround myself with people who have unique ability in areas that I'm weak in. But having said that, I don't care who you are as the CEO of a company. The one thing you can't outsource is your culture. You must own the culture. You must take responsibility for the culture. If the culture sucks at your company, look in the mirror. And I think those are the two things that I think that I would focus on oftentimes when I see companies that are either soaring or not taking flight the way they should. Usually those are two of the reasons.
A bit more from on the wealth management, because you're talking about the leadership side. I'm curious on the wealth management side behind it. what are some tactical things that a business owner might be missing on in terms of that's helping out their growth, that they're not, because I agree with you, right? That's what I typically say. I've told people for years, there's two places to make money. And this is, of course, I'm being really simplistic about this. I see people who are successful as business owners, and I see in ownership, I should say ownership, and I see people who are successful in sales. And whenever you can combine the two, it's a home run, right? But from your perspective, what do you think tactically from a business that, for whatever reason, they're not reaching? A lot of times, their money is trapped in their business, right?
Right.
So how do you help them get to that point where they're getting that wealth not trapped in the business where it actually becomes something they could create afterwards to truly retire?
If you think of a pyramid, you think of like Maslow's pyramid or any pyramid that's there. At the bottom, I think you have to start with something very basic. Do you have protection? Do you have, is your real estate in all separate LLCs? Do you have an umbrella liability policy? Don't tell me you don't have medical insurance or life insurance or disability insurance or whatever, the appropriate kind of coverage would be. It's about protection first. The second level as you go up that pyramid is cash confidence. I think the number one reason why businesses either fail or don't succeed to the level they should is because they don't have enough liquidity. That for me is I've made a great deal of my wealth when I had cash and somebody else needed cash. And I've also been able to have long-term business plans because we know life doesn't go like this, it goes like this. And you've got to have enough liquidity to withstand a bad quarter, even a bad year or two. If you move up the pyramid to the next level, to me, it's about feeding your money machine. If I only had $1 to invest, Carl, and only $1, the first place I'd look to invest it would be my business or some other operating company. I would never starve my money machine because I want to grow that asset and I want to grow the cash flow from that asset, which is my business. But then if you move up even higher up the hierarchy is as somebody who manages billions of dollars, it's not, there's dozens and dozens of asset classes. But for this purpose, I think there's two, and we call them paychecks or either free capital or play checks. And so what I want our clients to do is have first a series of assets that will give them a guaranteed or highly reliable stream of income outside their business. I'll call those paychecks. And then I want another series of assets where you can spend it, you can save it, you can give it away. But the important thing is it will not be responsible for producing income for their family. So if you have both paychecks and play checks, that's financial freedom. But I think there's still one more level. If you can have earned income in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s when all of your friends are going to early bird specials or worried about living too long or drinking domestic beer instead of imported beer or whatever their jam is, you're a net saver because you have operating income that's coming in to not only support your lifestyle but make you a net saver. And that's how real wealth is created. And I think it seems so simple, but it's not the advice that you're getting from, let's call it your local financial planner, your local wealth manager, insurance agent, CPA, what's, out there on the internet. They're not telling people how to, I always say, if Bill Gates was on this podcast with us, Carl, he wouldn't say I'm worth $110 billion because of his 401k. It's, and I think that somehow they've convinced a lot of the public that that's how they're going to, create a fortune.
Now, I thought you said something brilliant right there in your earlier part of the discussion about businesses. They typically do have too less of cash. It's amazing. I think I actually just literally researched last night. Less than half of companies have 2 months of operating cash in their business. That's less than 50% have only 2 months of cash. And that's why, once again, when there's a downturn, so much pain and suffering ends up happening, right? Because they literally don't have enough liquidity to get by. We are currently, this is being recorded in March of 2025, we have some interesting volatility, which is code word, of course, for the stock market's going down. And why? It's because there's a lot of changes happening right now in the marketplace, from tariffs to government cutting spending to interest rates haven't gone down yet. For business owners, they're struggling. I mean, I'm seeing the P&Ls for some of them because we work with them directly. We're seeing very weak February, very weak Q1s right now, in which has a risk of running a Q2. What do you help coach them when, I'm sure you're getting a few more phone calls today, your team is today versus perhaps in December. How do you help them out right now when there is volatility, when sales is going down, when their business isn't as strong because of whatever industry they're in, and they're seeing just general weakness? How do you give them guidance?
I would make the argument that the first book I wrote about 10 years ago was on mergers and acquisitions. And so what I would say is if you're a well-run company with low or reasonable amount of debt, not that you want to see anything bad happen to anybody and you want to see just good things happen to everybody, but that's when there's blood in the water. Meaning there's a lot of companies, if you're in whatever industry you're in, there are many of your competitors that got high debt, or are poorly managed or don't have a lot of liquidity, when they feel that crunch, they go from doing fine to code red. And so there's an opportunity for a well-run business to be able to play the merger acquisition game and buy not only their technology, their people, their customer lists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the ability to expand and grow by taking advantage of the fact that there is volatility in the marketplace or that uncertainty. Or some people, you may get to a certain age that says, I was thinking about retiring in 2 or 3 years anyway. I don't know what's going on. I don't want to go through the next downturn. I'll sell right now, and I'll sell at a discount to you, Carl, to take the risk out and to move on with the next phase of my life. And so I think that what in my life and everything, I'm always a contrarian, meaning if you're buying, I'm selling. If you're selling, I'm buying. So I don't want to do what everybody else is doing. Like I always know, I don't need any statistics to know the real estate market has peaked. All I need to do is get a couple of calls from my dentist telling me that they're now real estate developers. I know that the apocalypse is here, or they've bought, or they're buying restaurants, or my lawyers are buying restaurants, with no background in the restaurant business. And so I think that ultimately, you get to that place where you don't need to just see what's going on or empirically look at statistics and numbers just itself. You see in the marketplace, and that I think that ultimately that you've got to have flexibility. I also think that it should be very clear. Now, let's say you're not one of those premium companies, or you're one of the companies that has a little bit of hair on it that we had discussed. I think the other idea is that I believe that you should have an unlimited appetite for investment in your business, as long as you can get at least a 4 or 5 to 1 return on your money or more. And I think that so at the end of the idea, that's where you take a look at. So even in a declining market, or even with tariffs, or even with inflation, or any of the things that are sometimes barriers to profitability for businesses, there is opportunity to make money. And I think what you've got to do is you've got to assemble your extraordinary team, the smartest people your kitchen cabinet, and you've got to take a look at where the opportunity is in the marketplace. And I think for not every business, but for the overwhelming majority, this is when great fortunes will be made during these volatile times. The great fortunes are not made in the boom times. They're made in the times of economic uncertainty. And bold is a superpower.
I love the response that you had there, right? Because so many business owners, they're freaking out, they're concerned, they're hunkering down, right? Versus taking the other step and going, how can I take advantage of this opportunity, right? How can I win, and expand my market share, be more effective? I love the example of, there's going to be great people. Well, we're seeing it right now. Large corporations are laying off extraordinary. They're laying off bone right now. Muscle. There's some great human beings that are now out in the marketplace that are looking for an opportunity, and we can pick up people, and probably much more cost effectively than we could have certainly back in the middle of COVID, right? When you couldn't find anybody, right, in terms of talent. They were leaving for doubling their pay somewhere else. But it's still scary, right? It's still a scary thing of when you make that risk. So how do you, part of this is a mindset, right, Mark? How do you turn and help people with that mindset if they haven't done that in the past?
One of the things when I started, back in my career 40 years ago, that I'm least proud of is I saw people that were in a great deal of debt, and I helped them clean up the debt. I helped them double or triple their business. But if they didn't have good values around money, it was like giving an alcoholic a gallon of vodka or a drug addict an 8-ball of cocaine. And then I'd come back 2 years later and their problems didn't go away. They were like 10x'd because now they had more money and more credit lines to go do bad things with. And so that if they didn't have great values around money, what I was doing was actually harming them, not hurting them. And I think it's the same thing in life. Everything is psychological. And so ultimately, if you can't get your mindset around opportunity, that every problem is an opportunity, a chance for an opportunity, and look at things with an entrepreneurial mindset, you don't have a chance. That ultimately for most people, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I love one of Abe Lincoln's my 2 great Abe Lincoln quotes are, one is obviously fictitious. The first one is, what Abe Lincoln used to say is never trust the internet, but that's the fictitious one. But he used to say, but the real one was the fact that he would say most people that make up their minds to be happy are. That's attributed to Abe. And I think most people that make up their minds that they're indefatigable and they're going to make good, sound business decisions and take advantage of opportunities and be calm in an uncalm world. Once you have that mindset, you have people around you, then you're going to be the one that's going to be able to take advantage of all the chaos.
Let's say somebody's listening. A lot of the people who are listening to this are on that right side when they have the right mindset. But let's say somebody's listening and they have more of that concern. Where do you guide, direct them, give them principles of hey, like an example of money management, or perhaps an example of having a growth mindset. Outside of one of your books that you've authored, what is a book that you commonly will recommend to others of like, hey, I recommend you reading this because you need these insights?
Obviously, my favorite book of all time, probably, and it's hard to say because I like to read, is Malcolm Gladwell's book, where where you talk about putting 10,000 hours in to master any subject. Ultimately, most people will do just enough work to fail rather than the work necessary to master the subject. Whether it be learning their craft, prospecting, marketing, anything they do, they give up. They declare failure right on the precipice of victory if they would just stay the course. And so I like that. But I also like Ray Dalio's book, Principles, as well, where I love the fact that he ran his business on science and investments on science, but he was running his people based on personalities. And once he ran that on a scientific basis, both came into congruence. And I think ultimately, that the number one thing is you have to have emotional fitness. That I'm an emotional person. I think you're probably an emotional person at your core. But I think when things get tough, is you have to be empathetic, and you have to care about people. And in our business, one of our core values is people first, family first. But you have to make good long-term decisions, and you must be emotionally fit, even when the people around you are not.
That's right. Yeah, that's brilliant. Mark, how can people connect and learn more about what you're doing?
Well, I'd be happy to send them a copy of my latest book at books at Northeast Private Client Group, or books at northeastprivate.com. Maybe you could put something up at the end of the, a telephone number or an email address, because I probably messed that up. But yeah, I'd love to. We're in Florham Park, New Jersey. It's Northeast Private Client Group, and I'm just so happy to spend some time with you, Carl. What you're doing is terrific, and you are a wonderful host. You ask great questions, and thanks for allowing me to share a few minutes with you and your audience.
Absolutely. Well, hang on. I got a gift for you. And as we like to say, thank you so much once again. It's truly been an honor to have you on the show. And I love the success and I love the insights that you help bring to our audience. And I'd like to say to all of you who are listening, why we continue to get great people like Mark to come on the show is because of how you give us feedback and share what we're doing. I encourage you to reach out, learn more about what Mark's doing, order one of his books. He's truly an incredible person, and I love the energy that he has. I don't get the idea that you're retiring anytime soon, even though you can. Mark, is that correct?
Again, I think, but here's the thing that I used to think creating multi-generational wealth was enough. But we're a couple months past the holidays, where I watched It's a Wonderful Life again, and Mr. Potter had multi-generational wealth, but nobody wants to be Mr. Potter. If your spouse hates you, if your kids hate you, if you're sick, if you're miserable, who cares about that? So I think that ultimately, what you want people to aspire to do is not just have multi-generational wealth, but have a life by design, a life that's so great that they never have to take a vacation from it, much less retire from. So, I think that's to me, that's the aspirational piece for everybody.
Absolutely. I think that's a fantastic answer there. Well, thank you once again, Mark, for being on the show. And to everyone else who's listening, wishing you the absolute best and measuring your success. Have a great day.
Thanks, Carl.